Hello, everybody, and welcome to One Piece Chapter 1006, or as I like to call it, the Power of the Blue Flames chapter. Lots and lots of blue fire in this one. The three main captains of the supernova, Luffy, Law, and Kid, show up this week in the cover of Shonen Jump, kind of like a reference to the ending of Chapter 974, where the three of them show up. And it's funny because that chapter, it's almost been a year since we got that chapter, because we got that chapter back in March of 2020. Then we get this gorgeously vibrant color spread with Kaido, his calamities, and the Tobiropo, which is just breathing with color. I really like how a part of Kaido's club, Queen's weapon, and then Jack's tusk are outside of the margins. So it kind of looks like they're coming out of the page. And I've said this before, but I'm pretty sure that the upcoming volume covers, one of them is going to feature Kaido and his men. So it'll be Kaido, the Calamities, and the Tobiropo on one cover, and then the volume cover after that will feature the Straw Hats. So hopefully by then the matchups will be confirmed, and we'll get like two volume covers that if you put them together, you'll get the two sides representing the clash for the arc. I also really like Ulti's pose in the color spread. We start off with Flying Squirrel Smiley, Bao Huang, and she spots Yamato, and we see that there's something about the scope, or the eyesight ability of these spies, that allows them to see through clothes. It's like this X-ray vision kind of a thing that allows them to spot Momonosuke having the time of his life. So the transmission comes out of a cat on the third floor, which is where Sanji is, and he still hasn't run into Jack. Jack is also on the third floor. That's what we learned last chapter. So the two of them haven't crossed paths yet, and I don't know if they will at this point because Sanji is deciding on where to go. Should he go to where Kinemon and the Scabbards are and help out that way, or should he go to where Yamato is and help protect Momonosuke that way? Personally, I can't wait to see Sanji's reaction to learning who Yamato is and then finding out that Momonosuke is hiding in her clothing. But at the same time, I feel like there could be a third option of where Sanji could go, and that would be where Marco is right now. Best case scenario for me, Sanji puts on the raid suit and goes to where Marco is, so he can help him out against Queen and King. Because I think it becomes obvious by the end of the chapter that even though Marco is doing a tremendous job keeping these Yonko commanders at bay, he's gonna need help eventually because it's a 2v1, and it could soon turn into a 3v1 with Perospero's arrival. We get a shot of Onigashima floating towards Mount Fuji, and I feel like one of the reasons for why we've cut away from the rooftop is because, like, the time that we've been away from it, that's pretty much accounting for the 10-minute hockey break that Luffy needs. So once we get to the rooftop, it's going to be one of two things. Either hockey break is over and Luffy is ready to go and engage in battle again, or we're going to see that the supernova have been completely demolished and are on the floor. We finally find out that Perospero defeated both Wanda and Carrot at the entrance. Turns out that it was because it got cloudy and the moonlight got blocked. So their Sulong form ran out, and I find it interesting that Perospero doesn't finish them off. I mean, not that I was expecting Perospero to kill them, because this is One Piece. But yeah, Oda makes it very clear in this chapter that even though Perospero hates them, he actually insults Carrot, it's not enough for him to actually kill any of these minks. So he just kind of leaves them there and walks off, spinning his candy cane like a boss. And it kind of reminds me of something that he had said before, where he was being accused of killing Pedro. They were like, "You killed Pedro," and Perospero was like, "What? That guy blew himself up. I didn't kill him." And I've already kind of seen some talk of Perospero possibly fighting Sanji, but I think the problem with that is that Perospero's candy double fruit is weak to fire. So if Sanji were to fight Perospero, it would be a very easy fight for Sanji, because Sanji literally counters Perospero's double fruit perfectly. He broke through the candy already to save the Vinsmokes back in Whole Cake Island, and then when the Straw Hats were escaping, Perospero made this candy Iron Maiden thing, and Luffy punched a hole through it with Red Hawk, because again, like, he's weak to fire. So because Sanji counters Perospero's double fruit so well, if they were to fight, it would kind of be a very uninteresting fight. It also kind of comes down to who Perospero decides to fight against, or who he decides to support in battle. You know, whether it's King or Marco. Because technically speaking, both King and Marco did the exact same thing to Perospero, which is that they kicked the ship that he was on off of the waterfall. I mean, if I had to guess, based on what we've seen in the story thus far, I probably would say that Perospero is going to end up helping King and Queen. Because for a moment there, he did kind of want to form a temporary alliance with Marco. But then Big Mom showed up and said, like, no, Perospero, the alliance with Kaido was my idea. So respect the alliance. And that's kind of when Perospero decides to turn on Marco. And he actually was aiming a candy arrow at him. And then in this chapter, Perospero says something to the effect of like, oh, we gotta teach these up-and-comers or this new generation what it really means to be a Yonko. So ideologically, that puts him opposite of Marco, because Marco has been an avid supporter of the new generation. There's also a point that I want to make about Carrot here, which is that I think last year there was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of support for the idea of Carrot joining the crew. The whole Carrot for Nakama train, right? But if you look at the way that Oda has been handling Carrot as a character, especially when you compare it to the way that he's been handling Yamato, the focus that Yamato gets versus the focus that Carrot has gotten, it's not even close. Carrot has been neglected. She's been neglected in terms of panel time. She's been neglected in terms of her fight. Her fight got skipped over. Hyogoro's fighting in this chapter got more focused than hers. She's also been neglected in terms of her interactions with the Straw Hats. And right now, it just kind of seems like Yamato is just going to keep meeting more and more of them. So yeah, it just kind of seems that if Oda really wants Carrot to join the crew, then something kind of has to change. I think that Oda felt that we needed a reminder of the Ice Oni bullet effects, because it's been a while since we've been downstairs with the guys that have been infected. So he pretty much dedicates an entire page of the chapter to a recap about what the ice actually does. So Chopper's still rushing, working on a cure with Miyagi and Tristan, because what Marco's flames do is that they suppress the infection, but they don't actually cure it. I have to repeat that I think Apu has been the supernova that has surpassed my expectations the most. I expected him to be just down for the count, but he's taken a bunch of damage. So he's definitely more of a tank than I thought he was. And the last time we saw Drake in the previous chapter, he was in his full dinosaur form, but now he's in his hybrid form there with Hyogoro, which makes much more sense because at least in hybrid form, Drake can cover his ears. So it does kind of look like Apu managed to push Drake into his hybrid form. Now on the page where we see Apu, there's a guy with a jacket that has a message on it that says, and 2 times Yabi. So I did a little bit of research and I found that Yabi comes from the Japanese word yabai. Yabai means awesome, but it could mean awesome in a good way or in a not so good way, like in a more dangerous way, right? So the message is, and 2 times awesome or 2 times dangerous, which is obviously referring to Drake and Hyogoro. Now, Hyogoro actually says this. He says, it seems that accidentally coming into contact with this virus has extracted all the strength I have to the very limit of my life. And so I read that and I was like, wait, couldn't you use the effects of the ice to trigger a power boost? To use the power boost to your advantage? Once Chopper is done making the cure, the antidote, couldn't you actually make people more powerful with the virus and then have Chopper come in there and cure them before they die? Because if you could, I think that would be a pretty good strategy as a last resort. Like to infect people intentionally, have them get the power boost, have the ice draw out their strength, and then have Chopper cure them before they actually, have side effects that are just way too serious. I mean, I don't know if that would work, but I do think it's interesting that Oda decided to establish that short-term benefit of the effect of the Ice Oni bullets. In fact, the power boost is so strong that Queen even says, if I don't try and take down Hyogoro, he's gonna take out the entire floor. So what would happen if somebody like Drake had that effect? What if Chopper is able to trigger his monster point plus the Ice Oni rampage at the same time? Then again, it also depends on what the effects actually are. Like, does the ice take you back to your prime, or does it actually just give you a full-on strength boost? Because if it takes you back to your prime, if you're already at your prime, then how does that work? Again, as long as Chopper has the antidote ready, I think that would be a good last resort type of strategy. But because the cure isn't quite ready yet, Hyogoro tells the rest of the Yakuza bosses, if I turn on you, if I start going out of control, just go ahead and end me. And so I think that what Hyogoro says, that's a very samurai thing to say. It kind of goes along perfectly with the samurai code. Like, to be able to die honorably on the battlefield is one of the greatest honors a samurai could have. And I think that's why Jack wore warned Black Maria in the previous chapter about going over to where the scabbards were, because even though they're on the brink of death, they're all samurai. And so, once you're near death's door, for a samurai, that's when a serious power boost can happen. So Hyogoro goes up against the Mimawarigumi and essentially one-shots them. He cuts them up and breaks their swords. I mean, these blades are being shattered left and right. And I know the intended cliffhanger of this chapter is supposed to be whether or not Hyogoro lives or dies, right? For us to be like, is he actually gonna die? But to me, honestly, after this chapter, it doesn't really matter all that much. Because if you think about it, this chapter, whether he lives or dies, this chapter is the end of Hyogoro's character arc. He mentions having some regrets about the past, but that's sort of like healed. That's reached a point where he's able to get closure because of the scabbards and because of meeting Luffy. So to me, like him training Luffy, showing him how to use Rio, and then having this moment here, that's pretty much the finale for his growth and role as a character. So whether he lives or dies, he's already fulfilled his purpose. He's completed his journey. So Queen aims a beam at Hyogoro, but before he can actually shoot it out, Queen gets hit in the neck by a blast from Marco. And this is the same attack that Marco used on Big Mama Chanter, Big Mom's ship, to knock it off of the waterfall. Now Marco's attack obviously does internal damage. That's why Queen is smoking out of the mouth, because he's half cyborg, so he's releasing some smoke, and he's also bleeding out of the mouth. And so that actually gets me to think that Marco's Phoenix brand attack was using Rio, because Marco is literally shooting out a shockwave that causes internal damage, which is the definition of what advanced armament hockey is supposed to do. I mean, we already knew that he had armament hockey because back in Marineford he was able to fight with Logias. But yeah, I do think that this chapter also confirms that he has advanced armament as well. Queen shoots another beam at him and Marco dodges the attack using his observation hockey, but just to be safe, he also goes full Phoenix form just in case he got hit by the beam. If he had gotten hit, he would have been able to regenerate. So observation hockey, dodge, no big deal, but just to be safe, he transformed anyway. It turns out that just like Kinemon and Zoro, King is also able to cut fire, so he comes out of nowhere and slices one of Marco's wings clean off. And Marco actually uses that wing. He doesn't let that wing go to waste because he actually kind of pulls that fire towards him like a magnet. So he pulls that wing back towards him and manipulates that flame to be able to send back a counterattack. So he blends himself into his own flame and uses Haki to send back a headbutt. And the Haki is strong enough to send King crashing into the face of a building. And after that, he comes in there with a slam again against King. So it's like two very heavy, very strong moves against King back to back. Now, I'm assuming that at least one of those attacks that were aimed at King also ended up hitting Queen, because if you notice, Queen comes out of the rubble, and he seems to have taken damage, so maybe Marco was like, I'll just kill two birds with one stone, I'll aim my attack at King, but I'll also end up hitting the same place where Queen is. So Marco's attack essentially ends up pushing Queen out of his dinosaur form, out of his Brachiosaurus form, which is a feat that Big Mom achieved not too long ago in Udon, except Big Mom being a Yonko, she actually made it look easy. Whereas with Marco, you can tell that it actually took him more effort. And he's not done, actually, because he comes at Queen again with a kick, with a claw, which kind of reminds me of the same kick that he gave Aokiji back in Marineford. Of course, Aokiji being an admiral, the damage of Marco's kick was a lot less. This one sends Queen crashing into one of the towers, and you can tell, like, Marco is getting tired, right? Like, you can hear him panting, like, which makes perfect sense because, I mean, technically speaking, this fight, Marco versus Queen and King, has technically been going on since chapter 1000. Chapter 1000 is the chapter where Marco grabs King and Queen by the neck and he actually flings Zoro off onto the rooftop. So if we assume that this fight has been going on since then, that technically means that he's been fighting these guys longer than the Supernova have been fighting Kaido and Big Mom. So throughout all the rooftop chapters, it seems like Marco has been busy fighting two Yonko commanders, which is insane. Plus, he's also been using his flames to be able to suppress the infection of the people that got hit by the Ice Oni bullets. Obviously, right now, we still don't know too much about some of the other Yonko commanders. Like, Oda hasn't shown us Ben Beckman enough. We haven't seen Shiryu enough. Like, even King, we still haven't seen enough of him. He hasn't gone hybrid form. He's barely begun to use his sword in battle. So there's still a lot of stuff that we don't know. However, based off of this chapter, based on feats alone, Just feats, not portrayal or anything like that. I think this chapter does establish Marco as a candidate to be considered the strongest first Yonko commander. Thus far, given the feats that we have. We saw him stall Akainu temporarily in Marineford. He's been holding back King and Queen together. That's pretty impressive. I mean, the main thing that Katakuri has over Marco, which is, the main thing that Katakuri has over most characters, is his future sight, his observation haki. I remember back in Whole Cake when Luffy jumped out of the cake and Katakuri was handling Luffy. I remember, like, Jinbei, who I believe Jinbei to be second Yonko commander level, Jinbei came in there with a cup of tea and he was able to handle Katakuri's Devil Fruit power very, very well. In this chapter, King and Queen, they don't know what to do with Marco's Devil Fruit power. Granted, Jinbei had been with the Big Mom Pirates enough time to be able to gather information on the crew, on the Big Mom Pirates. So, he had enough intel to know how to counter Katakuri's Devil Fruit. So I don't want to sleep on Katakuri, because Katakuri is a great character. In fact, I think that as a character, I think Katakuri is a better character than Marco. But we're talking about feats right now, and so I gotta say, the Marco feats in this chapter, they add up well for him. There's a scene in Marineford where Crocoboy saves Ace from being executed, and so the Whitebeard pirates were getting ready to save Ace, but they don't have to anymore because Crocodile did the saving. And so Marco comes in there by the end and he's like, well, I guess I missed my chance to show off. So this chapter is him showing off. Now, a good question to come out of this is, was Marco as strong as he is now back in Marineford, right? Or did he perhaps get stronger from the Payback War? Even though he lost, like, we know that haki blooms in extreme situations, so maybe he got stronger, learned some new techniques from the fight against the Blackbeard pirates. So it's really good to see Marco shine in this one. I think he needed a chapter like this, especially after how easily Big Mom was able to choke him out and sort of like, immobilize him, which doesn't really make Marco look bad. It just makes Big Mom look like the monster that she is, right? The fact that she's able to handle Marco so easily is kind of terrifying. There's actually a line of dialogue in the official translation that kind of supports the idea, the notion that Marco has been fighting King and Queen for a while now. And that's when Queen shoots his laser beam at Marco and Marco dodges it. Queen says, "You just won't go down." So to me, that kind of implies that this fight has been going on for some time. Again, it must have been happening even before the supernova started fighting Big Mom and Kaido, because otherwise, why is Queen so frustrated, right? He's like, "You just won't go down, what's wrong with you?" Also, I cannot be the only one who thought about that Naruto Shippuden opening with Marco's Bluebird attack. I think the main message that Oda is trying to convey with this chapter is that Naruto openings are powerful, powerful things. The chapter ends with what appears to be Hyogoro about to be decapitated by one of the Yakuza bosses. I believe his name is Yatape, but the scene reminds me so much of the scene back in Whole Cake when Pound was apparently about to be decapitated by Oven. And we know how that one worked out. So I would be very surprised if we see a head roll next chapter. I think the most likely outcome is that Chopper's going to be ready with the antidote in the nick of time. He's going to be like, "Oh no, wait. I have the cure now. I figured it out." Because it's not just Hyogoro who needs to be saved. Like in that last page, you see that other characters, like other samurai and beast pirates, they're also like going back to becoming Ice Oni. So they need to be saved too. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that, Chopper's going to come up with the antidotes and that'll be resolved. And even if Hyogoro dies, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, if this were the real world and Hyogoro were a real old man, then yeah, I would be worried and I would say like, let's do everything we can to try and save this old man's life. But because he's a minor character in like a fiction, right, in the story, and because he's already kind of fulfilled his purpose, it's like, I still think there's room for the stakes to be raised a little bit more. I think that's coming with Hybrid Form Kaido and the matchups. Ultimately, I think Hyogoro's character comes down to Oda being a fan of Dragon Ball and wanting to have a Master Roshi type character for his Goku. And what better arc to have a Master Roshi type character than the arc that is based on Japan. I thought the chapter was good. I enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought about it down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Take care. If you appreciated the points that I made or, the video as a whole, you know what to do. Thank you so much again. Take care. Bye.